Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting for January 28th. I have a motion moved by Karen Terziano, seconded by Brian Thompson. Be it resolved, the regular council meeting agenda dated Monday, January 28th, 2019, be adopted as printed and circulated with the following addition. 11.4, this will be about Bill 66, the proposed Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness Act 2018. Just a letter from Municipal Affairs Mr. Steve Clark that I'd like to share with everyone. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest with respect to the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none. We'll move right into invited and ceremonial presentations, and we have with us the District Solicitor Jamie Clow here. He's going to come and talk to us about shared joint legal services. So Jamie, welcome. Come on down and we'll turn on this microphone for you here. And welcome to Huntsville. How was the drive up?
So far, so good.
Okay. You might be sleeping over somewhere. Maybe.
It's possible. I was checking out hotels on the way in.
Good stuff.
Looking for vacancies. It's all good. My wife knows, so she knows she won't send out the search party, Your Worship.
Welcome here.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I don't have a presentation. My recollection, I was being asked to come and answer questions and be a target, essentially.
Well, no.
Fire at will.
Okay. Well, then I will kick this off, and hopefully there could be a few questions from committee, or council, rather. Council will recall the CAO did a presentation with regard to potentially working together with the district and actually using the district solicitor's office to do a certain amount of legal work for the municipality in sort of a shared process, and council was concerned about the capacity for your department to actually do that, and so we thought maybe it'd be best for you to come here and speak to that. So maybe that's where we could start. I think maybe you could speak to a little bit about what your plan is and what you were thinking in terms of working with the lower tier municipalities and how that might affect the capacity of your office and your ability to do that.
Okay. Just before I start, I have one quick question. Do we have the 3 microphone rule here like we do in Bracebridge? I'm not going to, if I leave that on and don't try to find the button all the time, we'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Go ahead.
Perfect. So right now, the district legal department's made up of 2 lawyers, myself and Marnie Hudswell. Between the 2 of us, it's roughly 34 years of legal practice. And we have 3 law clerks. We have one who's just finishing up a contract position. The plan since day one, if we were to go down a shared services route with any of the areas who may have expressed interest, was one, to see if we could come to an agreement in terms of what the terms and the skeleton of agreement might look like. We did very well there. We actually ended up flushing out an agreement. But that agreement itself contemplates that at some point in time we need to sit down and assess where we're at. We've always understood from a district perspective, our capacity right now is to do district work, and if we were going to be taking on lower tier work, area work, we would need to, for lack of a better term, upstaff or bring in more resources. That could be a third party. What we've talked about in the agreement is we would assess, depending on the number of areas that came in, what the needs might be, and that could depend on the type of work as well. If it's real estate transactional work, that could be a law clerk, could be a paralegal. If it was, we need someone to go to a number of LPAT hearings, local planning appeal tribunal hearings, that would be a lawyer specifically, because that's who's licensed to practice in that area of law. So we're at the stage now where we've got a couple of areas who've expressed some interest. I think where we would go next, should there be an expression, is to sit down and do that assessment and say what type of work is coming from all sources, from external of the district. And then we would be using, the anticipation is this is a cost recovery. It's not a profit center. It is, we're going to take the billings that would come in and use that money to fund bringing more resources in to the district. The other opportunity that's in the agreement that sets out is to create a roster of lawyers. Back in my private days in private practice, we were on a number of rosters at my old firm for various municipalities. If they had overflow work, then that work would go to the roster lawyer who practiced in that area. The hope was that if we could get a coalition of the willing, for lack of a better term, together, and we were to approach law firms, we might be able to negotiate a better rate, a better deal for hourly rates and fees that might be charged, because we'd be bringing a bigger bulk of work and a bigger portfolio of work to their table. We haven't initiated that yet, because we still have to sort of pin down and narrow down how much work would come in, but that's the plan in a longer than a nutshell.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to turn it to questions here then. I'll start with Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Jamie, for that quick walkthrough. So I can imagine perhaps tapping in on something like finding a lawyer that might represent us, this municipality, in an LPAT hearing. So can you walk me through how that might work? I know you just sort of did, but if we decided maybe the municipality would represent at an LPAT hearing, we contact you and you will go to your roster, or you won't have anyone on staff?
It'll be a little bit, well, it's going to depend on the work we get. First off, for clarity, it could very well end up on my plate. We're not necessarily hiring a lawyer to do Huntsville's work or any particular area's work. We're bringing in more staff to be able to handle capacity as a whole. But in looking at that, it could very well be that on a 2-year contract position, we can attract someone with maybe a 1 to 5 year experience range, probably not a seasoned, grizzled veteran, for lack of a better term. And depending on the significance of the hearing, you may want someone who's got a little more seasoning in front of the board, or the tribunal now as it's known. I have done that work for about 15 years, so I'm quite comfortable in front of the tribunal. So it could very well land on my plate as opposed to the new person that we're bringing in. If it were to be a rostered lawyer position, I'll walk you through from the other side of the coin. As a private practice lawyer, we attended, and basically it was like a job interview, and we would show up and make a presentation if we were selected to do so, and say, here are our lawyers, here's what we do, here's the rates that we propose to charge. If you would like us to do work, give us a call. And so the way the agreement's been structured, the areas would have the ability to come into that process as well and be part of that selection group. We've also created the opportunity to have area representatives at the table should we go to hire someone to bring into the district legal department. So that person you would have an opportunity to have a say in the selection process of that as well.
Okay, Councillor Withey and then Thompson.
Thank you, Worship. Jamie, can you tell me, so this is for sharing legal services, obviously. That's what happens in this situation if our council is at odds with district council?
Thank you. Through your worship. We've actually built that into the agreement. All lawyers have to worry about that stuff. If we're taking on more than one client, we all get very concerned about conflicts. What we've done is worked in a scenario where we identify what we're going to do at different stages where the conflict comes up. So if we know about it off the top, that this is going to be a conflict situation where we just cannot act, then the area will not be referring that to us. They could have access to the rostered lawyers if they wanted to do that, or they would go external. My recollection, and I'm sorry I read it earlier this afternoon, but my recollection is the district could, if there's no objection, the district legal department could act on it for the district. If the conflict came up during the course of the matter, so say we find out for whatever reason in the middle of a litigation that somehow we're at odds, what we would do at that, and the district was representing Huntsville in that matter, what we would do is, regardless of who I am, now as a lawyer, I have 2 clients who have conflicting issues, I would have to step away, and that's what the agreement basically says, is that the internal district legal department, or if we were sharing a rostered lawyer, that person would have to step back, and both municipalities would have to avail themselves, again, of the roster, if there was other lawyers there who could do that work, or would have to find a third party to deal with it that way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So this agreement, would it would it be mandatory that we would go to you first, or could we at any time decide to go anywhere we wanted?
Again, through your worship, I believe if my recollection of the agreement is that there is a schedule attached that is called scope of service. The items in that scope, that fall within that scope of service, so basically it's defining the areas that you will be referring, under the agreement, you would be referring to the district. Those items would essentially be, yes, you need to send those our way unless there's a conflict. That way, there's some predictability in terms of being able to know we're going to have work coming in so that we can fund any in-house additions that we're making based on the idea that we'd be making, collecting the hourly fee back, okay? So if it falls within the scope of service, yes. There's also an opportunity that if there's something that comes up that, for whatever reason, it wasn't anticipated that you would want to have district legal services do the matter, it can be added in. We just need to talk about that a little bit at first to make sure that it falls within one of our areas of expertise and comfort level, because we don't want to take on work that we're not capable of doing. As an example, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a sports and entertainment lawyer, and if for some reason something came up where you needed one, I'd be looking to help you find someone, or you could find someone on your own, is my recollection of the way it works.
Now I'll come back to you. Councillor Thompson, and then we...
Thank you, Your Worship, and Jamie, thanks for coming to town. Jamie, how would this save us money?
I don't know exactly what you're paying your legal counsel now. The rates that we're paying, that we're charging under the agreement are based on, what we did was, to keep it simple, was to figure out what the burdened rate of myself, as an example, and all the other legal staff was, broke it down into how many hours in a full-time year, and that's how we came up with the hourly rate. So I'm a 2000 call, so I've been practicing for 19 years, and if my memory serves, it's $190 an hour would be my billable rate. When I left private practice to come to the district 6 years ago, my hourly rate fell, depending on who you were as a client, somewhere between $325 and $350. Now I would anticipate I'd be asking somewhere in the neighborhood of $375 to $4 an hour. So I'm guessing for me, probably saving half.
Yeah, the report did speak to that the CIO presented, and it would be about half of what we pay now.
Okay, further to that?
Yep.
One of the I think biggest complaints we have now with the legal department of district is the length of time it takes to get things processed through the legal department. By adding to what you're doing now, is this going to help speed things up down there, or are we looking at things maybe even taking longer, Jamie? So,
Sorry, I missed the last part of the question.
I said, are we looking at things speeding up from the legal department of district, or maybe even taking longer if you take on this added burden?
So the agreement speaks in there that it's our so the district is essentially undertaking that we're going to meet the service expectations, and that's on our, that would be the district, I'm saying our, but I'm not the district. It would be the district's obligation to meet the service obligations that we're undertaking. There's an undertaking to get the right number of staff to make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the areas. We've also built in a mandatory requirement that we get together at least twice a year, but I would anticipate more, particularly up front, to talk about, are we meeting service expectations? Are we not meeting expectations? Is the quality what you're looking for? Is there something we can do to improve quality, efficiency, all of those things? So the anticipation on your end, and as an area, would be to meet the expectation, and you would have recourse to come back to us and say, you're not doing the job that we want you to do. From the district's perspective, there are definitely areas that have been identified as, I would say, processes that need to be improved. We have hired some consultants to help us in some areas, like the development area. We did go through that process, and we're working our way through. I don't know that there is an expectation that through shared legal services we're going to be affecting district times in terms of getting through things. I think that's more of a looking internally and figuring out ways to become more efficient but use the resources we currently have better and to communicate better internally to make sure that we're doing that.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Jamie, so I just wanted to pick up on some of the last points that you made. If, for example, for one reason or another, after we've entered into a shared legal agreement with the district, and we felt that we weren't satisfied with the service we were receiving, explain to me or walk me through exactly how the process would unfold for us to back away from that agreement and then return to our own in-house or contracted services.
Sure, through you, Your Worship. So it's an interesting point, and it's one that I actually spoke with Ms. Aubuchon about it earlier today. The way we had structured the agreement originally was it was a two-year commitment on both sides, and that essentially the concern in a nutshell was if we were going to recruit and hire in-house, we wanted to be able to offer something that would secure getting a quality candidate and candidates, pardon me, to apply and be able to retain them, in some comfort level that I'm going to have a job for the next 2 years. But in doing that, we may have gone too far the other way and not left an opportunity to deal with the other side of the coin, is if an area or areas do decide they want to leave. How do we address that? And we hadn't left an easy out, for lack of a better term. It was going to be essentially, there had to be a fundamental breach, more or less, of the agreement. I spoke with Mr. Dubin, our CAO at the district, about this earlier today, and then raised the possibility with Huntsville staff that might be something that we can go back and revisit, because the concern really was, from the district level, was we don't want to offer somebody a 2-year position and then suddenly find out that the tap has been turned off and we don't have an opportunity to either provide the work for that person to have a job or the fees to support that salary. In speaking with Huntsville staff this morning, I kind of remember where I am, I did raise a couple of options to be able to address that. One would be maybe we do it by way of an appropriate notice period, that if the area wanted to extract itself from the agreement, that we would say, okay, we're going to have somebody in a 2-year contract, they're going to want X weeks' notice that they're going to be losing their position. Maybe we say, okay, if the area wants to leave, we would ask for X plus a few weeks so that we can help in that transition or something along that line. So as currently drafted, the agreement doesn't allow that sort of ability to easily have the areas extricate themselves, but I think that's something we can go back and work on and come up with something that's more balanced for both sides of the table so that we can find a way to give a comfort level for everybody.
Councillor Emmer?
Thank you, Worship. To you. Hi, Jamie. Just a quick question. I'm just curious if there are other municipalities right now in Muskoka that are looking at this opportunity, and is there a limit to how many you would want to take on, or is it just, and would the cost drop if more municipalities joined?
Through you, Your Worship, I think the short answer is I'll say there's one, but I won't identify who that is. So we're looking at a potential of 2 right now. We did build in the agreement the ability to add in other areas if everything goes as well as we hope it does, so that they can avail themselves. As I say, that the mechanism of will rates go down or up? I'm going to guess no, just because it is a cost recovery model. It's not a profit model. We're really looking at just trying to find a way to do this cheaper for the taxpayer and find a way to provide legal services for the municipalities who want to avail themselves of that shared model in a way that we can save money, because ultimately the bills are coming out of one wallet. So I don't know that it's going to get much cheaper by adding, but there is the opportunity to do that, and it is in consultation with any existing partners, basically, to make sure that if there is going to be a third or a fourth, that the first and second have the chance to say, well, maybe we need to bring in another lawyer, or maybe we need to look at how we're going to do this to make sure there's enough resources for all, as opposed to just sticking at, well, we hired one when we brought the first 2 in. That's all we really need. We don't need any more staff. That may or may not be the case, so let's take a look at it as a group, because our decision on that would obviously impact our partners, and we don't want to do that without being able to come back and say, let's talk.
Okay, Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you and/or your rostered lawyers looking for retainers?
We have not asked for a retainer in the agreement, no. The rostered lawyers, I can only speak to, we haven't asked yet, so I don't have an answer for you. I can only speak to my past experience in the private sector. And at that time, it was not a retainer basis up front. It was only when you wish to engage in that service to say, I want to retain that firm for file A, then whoever the lawyer would be that would take that on may or may not, depending on the nature of the relationship. Typically, we did not, because we had a pretty good relationship with the municipalities that we worked for in my former life.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Terziano?
Thank you, Your Worship. Jamie, I understand that this is coming to our corporate service meeting on Thursday, and you couldn't be at that, hence the question and answer period tonight. Is there any chance that we would have an answer before Thursday on basically how we can get out of the agreement if need be? I understand if you guys attract staff, you need to have some guarantees for them, but there's a 6-month clause to get out of the contract at the end of it, if we want to terminate it, but is there a possibility of getting something like that agreed upon for lack of service, I guess?
By Thursday may be problematic. We're in our budget process, and I'm not sure what anybody's schedules are, but I'm happy to have a general, I know I have some time tomorrow, and I'd be happy to reach out to Huntsville staff and see what we can even conceptually come up with. I don't know that we'd have it formally amended, formally amending the agreement yet, but we could certainly come up conceptually with some ideas, I believe, and at least have a direction for you, if that's of assistance.
Go ahead.
I think it may not be the only stumbling block, but I know it was one of the issues we talked about when it was here the first time around, and if we could just get a sense that there would be something like that we could get, it would give us a better idea whether we can move ahead.
If I could, Your
Yeah,
Worship,
go ahead.
I think what I would say is, I think that if it was a stumbling block, I think it was a stumbling block that was created for good intentions. And then in hindsight, after reading the staff reports that came out of the last discussion, there was a bit of an aha moment to say, maybe we can go back and find a way to just smooth that stumbling block over. So I'm confident we can come up with something, and happy to have those discussions, as I say.
Okay, Jamie, thank you very much. I think that means we'll probably have a revised report come back, Madam CIO? Madam Director of Corporate Services? Okay. Jamie, thank you very much.
Okay,
Safe
thank
drive
you.
home. Okay, next we have deputations, and we have Robin Clipsham here from the Canadian Improv Games. Robin, welcome. Come on down.
Hi.
Oh, and you have a PowerPoint. You have a PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yes, I do. Oh, really? I mean, I'm not just naturally vocal enough. Thank you so much for welcoming me here tonight to present on behalf of the Canadian Improv Games. And it's my pleasure to be here, so thank you so much. I brought a little prop here. Many of you know that I'm involved in theater work, and I've also been an instructor and a lead educator at BMLSS for many years. And so now in my retirement, I am also working on behalf of the Canadian Improv Games. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about it because we have some exciting news and opportunity. So this is a little prop I brought. This is the T-shirt. I think it's important to understand that the Canadian Improv Games has a long and hallowed history. And there are people all across Canada, 100,000 plus alumni across Canada with T-shirts like this or similar, or some other logo, et cetera. So it really is an important organization, and thank you for letting me be here to tell you about it. I also want to mention, there have two people sitting up in the gallery. Kim Russell-Brooks is here, and I couldn't thank her more. She is the lead instructor at Huntsville High School, and so you will hear Huntsville High School mentioned tonight. And also Matt Huddlestone is here from the Algonquin Theatre. You'll also hear the Algonquin Theatre mentioned tonight. So for over 40 years, students have enjoyed the thrill and the excitement of participating in the Canadian Improv Games. From its humble beginnings as an educational adventure, it became a new style of theater learning. The Canadian Improv Games got its start in 1977. It is a national charitable volunteer organization, and it started in Ottawa. Today, CIG is home to one of the largest and most geographically dispersed theater festivals in Canada, with 14 regional programs and over, as I said, over 100,000 alumni participants. Staffed by dedicated volunteers from across Canada, we have volunteers all the way from Vancouver Island to Corner Brook, Newfoundland, and everywhere in between. Each year, students gain access through their high school programs to a variety of immersive workshops, training sessions, performance opportunities that are formatted to build and promote invaluable skills. These skills include positivity, communication, leadership, commitment, and teamwork. Now, students work as teams all year long in their regions across Canada, and the winners of each region travel to Ottawa for a week-long improv festival. Their hotel costs, their tuition costs are paid, and they get the experience of a lifetime. And I think Kim would agree with me, as coaches who have both taken teams from little towns, Huntsville and Bracebridge respectively, to this kind of experience, we know firsthand the thrill of this experience. You perform, or teams perform, at the National Arts Centre. That organization donates its theater to these students for an entire week. Their staff are part of this. Their ushers are part of this. People come from across Canada to watch this improv festival. Over the years, a number of notable Canadian performers have had their start on the CIG stage. These performers include such people as Sandra Oh, Seth Rogen, Nathan Fielder, Alanis Morissette, and Tatiana Maslany, who many of you will know played in Orphan Black brilliantly and is now starring on Broadway. The Canadian Improv Games were created by Howard Jerome and Jamie Willie Wiley based on the concept of the Improv Olympics, and they were created by two people named David Shepard and Howard Jerome. And Willie Wiley and his improv team Stage Fright produced the first matches in 1977, so that's how it got its start. That continued through to the early 80s. By the 90s, with the efforts of Mr. Wiley and Johnson Moretti, the games had exploded into a national phenomenon, and they were so popular that they were given live coverage on YTV. So it was a great series, and that's when I came into the scene. 1993, I got a letter in the mail, in my mailbox at BMLSS, hey, you and 5 to 8 students can enter this competition and have a lot of fun as a drama teacher. Well, I had a girl in one of my classes named Margaret Wessling, and Margaret was doing talent nights. She was a sketch comedy artist, and she was doing talent nights at BMLSS once a month on Thursday nights. And I said, Margaret, if you can get 4 of your friends together, we can have an improv team, and we can do this. It looks like a lot of fun. So we put something on the announcements, and we had over 30 people show up for the meeting. We formed 2 teams that year, 8 students each, so we had 2 teams in all 16 people, and we entered the video competition, and they were on those little hard tapes, VHS tapes. We had these big cameras set up in the drama room, and we had a live studio audience, and we created these big VHS tapes and sent them off for adjudication. We didn't hear back for a month and a half, and when we got it, our hands were shaking, and we were seeing how we stacked up and what our marks were, etc. But more than that, we'd had the time of our lives. This went on for a few years until I found out about a tournament in Kingston. I started taking the kids down to Kingston for their regional tournament. We did pretty well, but the highest we ever got was a bronze medal at that. Then I found out about a Sudbury tournament. We went up there, and the very first year, we got the silver medal. So things were really within our grasp at that point. Finally, after years and years, 15 years it took us, but BMLSS became the first gold medal winner from Muskoka, and we went to this national festival, and I will never, ever forget it. Well, the regional finals are coming to Huntsville on Saturday, February the 16th. Now, our region was comprised of Sudbury and Muskoka, and each year in the past, Muskoka teams have traveled to Sudbury to compete. But this year, Muskoka has been asked to host the tournament due in no small part to the growth of this sport here during recent years. In past years, winners of the tournament have included Huntsville High School, team is shown here, BMLSS. Those 2 teams alone prove that our students can compete with the very, very best. Along with Gravenhurst High School, which placed a very, very close second to a Sudbury team last year, and 3 teams from Sudbury, we've also added Barrie and Orillia to our region, so the competition will be even more intense this year. Also very exciting is the junior tournament, which will feature the brand new Monk Public School team. This will be held on Saturday afternoon, February 16th, along with HHS's junior team and a junior team from Sudbury. They'll be competing in the afternoon. And it's my personal goal to engage a Huntsville Elementary School team next year. I was this close to getting an agreement this year, but it was just a little too late. So I'm hoping if I start early, I can get our very own Huntsville Elementary School, whether that's Spruce Glen or Pine Glen or Huntsville Public School or Riverside, and we can continue to grow and have fun at this junior level. It all makes for a whole lot of fun, learning, growth, commitment, challenge, and change. Imagine the excitement of being named one of 20 of the best teams from across Canada, and we are doing it right here consistently. As you can see, the Canadian Improv Games, or the CIG as we call it, is a pathway to success for so many. The skills accrued have applications to all interests and disciplines. In fact, when I was teaching for the board, I had the pleasure of meeting all kinds of employers throughout Muskoka. Through my work with those kids and through my work as a co-op ed teacher, time and time again, employers would say, Robin, if students show that they've had improv team experience on their resume, I want that kid. And I'd say, why? Why do you want them to work for you? Because they understand teamwork, they understand communication, they understand flexibility, they understand all of the things that I'm looking for. So that's what taught me that the games were more than just a chance to have fun. They were a chance to learn real skills that apply across the board, whether it's in the sciences, engineering, in theater, of course, education, technology, whatever it is. And that's what the CIG is all about. Teamwork, building confidence, public speaking, and critical thinking. Now, this is what I have to say about the games, but here is what the people involved have to say about the games and their experience in it. I discovered a community. Some people will say, I discovered my community. It completely changed me for the better. Improv teaches you to embrace who you really are. I'm much better at thinking on my feet. I learned positivity and improved mental health. Improv is a social confidence superpower. I learned to listen. We all have valuable ideas. And my favorite, amazing. The Canadian Improv Games has, as I said, over 100,000 alumni. We coach and teach over 5,000 students each year, 32 programs, over 40 years of experience, events held across Canada. We have a chance this year to put Huntsville's Algonquin Theatre on the map for youth. Matt and I have talked about it many times. If we want our theatre to be a viable industry into the future, we need to have our youth engaged. We need to have them empowered. We need to have their bums in our seats. We need to show Huntsville and beyond that theater can be all that it is, plus. We can have wonderful, imaginative scenes that come out of nothing but a suggestion from the audience. We can have youth totally, completely engaged in what they're doing, growing, learning, changing. It's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, and I'm hoping that I'm persuading you little by little, if you weren't persuaded all at the beginning, that I'm passionate about this, just as passionate as I am about working with youth and watching them develop and grow. Huntsville's theater is beautiful and can be a real showcase for our region, which was called Sudbury in Northern Ontario. I am formally asking my board of the Canadian Improv Games to let us change the name to being North and Central Ontario, now that we're going to be folding in Barrie and Orillia as well. So what am I asking for? I'm asking you to be our sponsor for one day. I'm asking you to donate the use of the theater for Saturday, February 16th from 10 in the morning till 11 at night. We don't need technical support. We don't really need anything. We just need the space and the lights on so that we can showcase our region's youth improv talent. I come armed with a coterie of fine young volunteers, 3 former players from Kim's team, Cooper Ebbs Picken, Mary Grace or Grace Murphy, and Brittany Ransom have all volunteered to give up their entire weekend to volunteer for the games and be part of it. They are fine, fine young people and will represent this region exceptionally well. I also just want to finish off by saying thank you from me, from all of the kids I represent, from the Canadian Improv Games, and we certainly hope that you will support our cause. I also would like to take a few minutes to answer any questions, if there are any questions that I've left untouched.
Thank you, Robin. That was a great presentation. I don't think there's any questions, no. I'm going to start over here with Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation, thank you very much. I felt your
you.
excitement, I'm sure everybody in the room did. I'm curious, that day, the 16th, is it open to the public to come and go? Is there a ticket sales?
Absolutely.
Or will you be advertised?
It's entrance by donation. There is an amount that we suggest that people give. But what happens is that, of course, the kids bring their parents, their friends, their family. I'm hoping that Huntsville High School will be there cheering on their team. And we've never had the opportunity to hold it here at home. We've always gone to Sudbury, or as I said, to Kingston, or wherever I've had to go to take them. So this is really exciting. I'm hoping that we can raise the roof here, because there's nothing like having the home team advantage. But it is open and will be advertised to the public. And we welcome, one thing we say in the games is we are a clean games. We don't have scenes about anything that your grandmother wouldn't want to hear about. there is, it's not a swear fest. It's not we don't have scenes about anything you might talk about in the doctor's office. It's just not done. It's a very positive environment, and we make it so.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Robin. Actually, Councillor Harmer asked my question, but I'd just like to say that thank you for the presentation and for all of the work that you've put into this.
You're welcome, and thank you, Nancy.
No, it was, I'm very excited, and when I read about the request, I certainly will be supporting it. I think from an educational perspective, it's incredible. So,
Thank you. I agree.
Councillor Whitty?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Robin. When you said clean games, I was wondering if there's going to be random drug testing or anything.
Well, that's another thing. Every student signs a drug and alcohol policy.
Oh, gosh. I didn't
And
mean to go.
no,
Wasn't serious.
I'm serious. It's the games has a high standard to uphold. We want to continue our presence teaching in the elementary and secondary schools of Canada. And so we hold ourselves, we're very professional, we hold ourselves in very high regard. I'm probably the oldest volunteer. The youngest volunteer is probably about 19. But that's the way it is. And the exciting thing for me is I can be here, I'm obviously older. I certainly don't feel older a lot of the time, but I am welcome. I am as welcome in this organization as its youngest member. And I am valued just as we all are. So, yeah, it's
Go ahead.
there won't be any random testing at the door either, Tim. So in case you're thinking,
Just asking on behalf of Councillor Alcock.
yeah, just in case, I won't have the breathalyzers set up in the lobby, but anyway.
I would pay to see Councillor Alcock do a one-woman show. Improv.
Yes,
But
wonderful.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
You should get to the question.
Curiously, I was just curious, earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned that the students that go to Ottawa, you said their hotels and tuition is paid.
Yes.
What's the tuition part?
The tuition, not only do they compete, but they get a full week of festival level, national level trainers training them in the skills of improv. I'll just give you a few of the skills. One skill is listening. Anybody can use that skill. Another skill that they learn is accepting offers. So if you and I are in a business meeting and I say, Tim, you know, I really think that this might do well for our company. Well, we train people to say yes. And if we tried that, maybe this would happen. Instead of, no, I don't think that's a good idea. No, I tried it 10 years ago. It's old. So we train people to yes and in situations. They get a solid week of training in all of the skills that the games are part of or uphold.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship Robin. I admire your passion and commitment to these kids, and I can fully support it. And what a great presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
People should hire you to do their presentations for them all the time.
I agree. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And Nancy, if you want to get that one woman show up, just call me. I'll be there for you in spades.
Okay.
Sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. I love Huntsville, and Huntsville has been so welcoming to me. And Matt, thank you. Thank you for making all of our dreams even possible. You've just been an amazing supporter. And Kim, thank you for the fine, fine work. I can't wait to see these kids play. You are going to love it.
Okay.
Kim's done an amazing job.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion a little bit further on in the agenda to deal with that. First, though, we'll deal with council minutes. And so I have a motion moved by Brian Thompson, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved, the following council meeting minutes be adopted as printed and circulated. First is the joint council meeting from January 7th, 2019, special council meeting January 16th, 2019, special council meeting January 17th, 2019. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay, reports and meetings. Huntsville Public Library Board from November the 12th. Councillor Thompson, anything to highlight there?
Was our last full meeting, last full meeting of the last term, I should say, for the library board. I don't really have a lot to report from that other than it was our last meeting. I think the next one was at our budget meeting on the 10th of December here, when the old board actually was representing that last term. But we have our next meeting coming up on February 6th.
Okay.
That'll be with the new board.
Great. Okay, Aspen Community Hall Committee minutes from the 14th of November and the 11th of January. Councillor Schumacher, anything to highlight for us there?
No, Your Worship, pretty much what is there is all good to go.
Okay. Any questions for Councillor Schumacher? Okay. You're as concise as your previous Councillor Schumacher. I love it. It's truly fantastic. Yeah, did you? Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's truly fabulous. Committee of Adjustment, January 16th. Councillor Fitzgerald is our vice chair. Anything to report from the first Committee of Adjustment in its new form?
I don't think there was anything really outrageous. It was nice for the community to get together, and we had a brief overview from Kirsten in planning, so I think everyone's got their feet under them and ready to go.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, feel free.
Are there any questions of Councillor Fitzgerald? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the BIA Board of Management update. Councillor Terziano, or Deputy Mayor Terziano, anything to highlight there from the BIA?
There is not. Your
Okay.
Worship.
Any questions of Deputy Mayor Terziano about that lengthy report? Okay, move on to the Huntsville Lake-Based Chamber of Commerce. Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the annual general meeting was last week. As you know, you were the guest speaker at that event. So if you want me to summarize what your thoughts there, or if you want to do it yourself, it's
I'd be
at your
curious
own
to hear your
peril.
summary of my thoughts.
I thought it was just for those who weren't there, the Mayor Aitchison outlined and answered questions regarding the tourism tax that is moving along. So that was a good discussion, and there were plenty of questions from the audience to be fielded. And as you know, around this table, many of those same questions have been batted around here as well. We had an actual meeting following the AGM and just swore in the new members of the board, which are Sue Burke and Colleen Mitchell. If you'll remember, she was a former employee here at the town. And we lost Jessica Brown and Luke Nixon-Jansen from the board. Other than that, our next meeting is 3 weeks from now, so more to come.
Okay, any questions of Councillor Wiebe? Okay, moving on. We have motion moved by Nancy Alcock, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved, the Development Services Committee meeting minutes dated January the 16th, 2019, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as printed and circulated, with the exception of recommendation DSC 07-19 to be polled and voted on separately. Councillor Alcock, anything to highlight from that meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't highlight all of the items because it was a lengthy meeting, but the first item up was information item under public meetings regarding a zoning bylaw amendment dealing with two properties on Lake Wasiosa, and the proposal to change the zoning for two developments properties on Treasure Island in Lake Wasiosa. And it was a very well-attended meeting. The gallery was full, lots of comments from lots of different people, and but as I said, it was information only. So staff will be taking all of those comments back and reporting back to us later. We did suggest, though, at the end of the meeting that the applicant try and have a meeting with a number of the representatives in the community to resolve some of the issues. We also had a presentation from Deerhurst regarding a proposal to provide temporary housing. And again, it was just a public meeting for information only. And there were some questions about whether or not they would be considering building permanent housing at a later date. And while they are considering that, they talked about the incredible need for temporary housing for their seasonal staff at this point. So we had a number of items, and I think that's all I'm going to report on now.
Any questions of Councillor Alcock? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? It's carried. A motion moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Dan Armour. Be it resolved, the Development Services Committee recommended council that zoning bylaw amendment Z63 2018 HTE be approved. And then there's a motion moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Dan Armour. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment Z63 2000 HTE be referred back to the February 13th, 2019 Development Services Committee for further discussion. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I put the motion forward to move it back, I think in discussion with constituents, that a lot of people weren't comfortable with that number of hens or meat birds in order to make it sustainable. So I think that it's something that we need to revisit and get some input on.
A little more discussion. Okay, any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. We have a motion moved by Jonathan Weeb, seconded by Dan Armour. Be it resolved that staff be directed to waive fees for the use of the Algonquin Theatre in the total amount of $432 for the Canadian Improv Games Northern Regional Finals to be held on Saturday, February the 16th, 2019. Questions? Deputy Mayor Terziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Matt. As much as everybody's very excited about it, will this be funded through the community grant program, or are you just planning to waive it and not have the revenue source?
We're just planning on, through Your Worship, apologize for that. We're just planning on waiving it right now, Deputy Mayor.
And is that 432, would that be a rental cost or a staffing cost?
That includes the rental of the theater, Deputy Mayor. That includes front of house, and that includes our technical director, Crispin.
Any other questions? Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Matt. So when Robin was here, she had said that they don't really need anybody. So does that? How does that play into what you're prepared to offer in terms of the rental?
Through you, Your Worship. What it does, we will still have Chris Boone, who is our technical director for the town of Huntsville. He will be in on a scheduled day, a scheduled work day for Chris, so it'd be nothing on that end. We're incredibly fortunate that I have a full roster of volunteers on our end that are willing to volunteer for this. Our front of house person, who is a retired drama teacher from Newmarket, is also coming in that day. I will be in also on that day as well, just because it is too much of an exciting opportunity to miss. So.
Councillor Fitzgerald, and then Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Matt. Matt, I know when you have some of these smaller events, do we still open concessions and try to do things in the lobby and promote sales of any items through the theater, or are they providing that service? I guess I'm just curious.
Through you, Your Worship, that day we'll absolutely have the concession open. No, there will not be alcohol being served that day. There will be, we will have, we'll gladly have everything else on sale that day for them. So,
thank you.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was actually my question. And so there's no anticipated what you might see in sales for that day, or anything to offset this this proposed gift?
Through you, Your Worship, nothing immediately, Councillor Withey, but I would imagine our candy and pop and water sales will be higher than normal.
No alcohol, though?
No, sir.
I guess Tim won't be here then.
I'm still going to invite everybody to come.
I verified there wasn't any testing. So.
Any other questions? Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I'm just curious, Matt, will you be getting a schedule ahead of time of the times and which school will be performing that you can send out to everybody so we know in the future?
Through you, Your Worship, 110%. That is our plan to do that. It's too big of an opportunity. I'm trying to contain them. High energy enough. I'm trying to contain my excitement for this event and what an honor it is. I can't stress enough. This is not. We will not be awarded this every year. This is the first time in Muskoka. Once we touch it, we will set the standard. We will not see this event probably for another, if we're lucky, 4 or 5 years.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. In the first paragraph of Robin's letter, mentions it's a charity organization running a variety of programs for high school students teaching invaluable life skills. Where is that done? Like, where are these things? Do they have classes at the high school? And are they funded through this? Like, I'm just wondering where this money would go that's being raised that day.
Through Your Worship, I would, if I can answer it, I'm not going to speak for Robin on exactly on what that is, just from my past experience. I'm going to use the Huntsville High School team. Who you saw, Kim from the high school that's here. She is the head of the drama department at the high school. She is a trained instructor for that. We are truly lucky to have that opportunity in Huntsville, where we do have somebody from the Improv Games that are here to do that training and to travel with the kids. Kids from Huntsville last year exploded on the scene. They traveled all over. So when it comes to the rest of the programs, high schools will actually they'll actually ask these instructors to come in and volunteer their time. I know in some areas of the country, they do it over lunchtime programs. There's some schools out west, speaking with a colleague, that do it at breakfast programs. They'll actually incorporate it before school. Helps fight off anxiety, builds confidence for a lot of these kids before the day. And obviously, during school, it counts for high and after school. It's 100% volunteer.
So the money that would be raised would be used to pay for travel and that kind of
Travel,
expenses?
Counselor Withy asked the question before when it comes to the, they call it the tuition that they do in Ottawa. These kids just aren't in Ottawa. They're full days. They're there from 8:30 in the morning until usually 7 or 8 at night. 100% is paid for through this program.
Okay, any other questions? The absolute last one, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Aitchison, through you.
Everyone's so excited about it, there's a million questions.
Going forward, assuming that the Huntsville kids participate in the years ahead, would some of this money be used to help them travel, for example, to Sudbury if they hold it next year? Or like, is it kind of a working budget that gets put back in for these kind of regional competitions?
Through Your Worship, I can get you that answer for you, Councillor. It's more of a Robin question. I will gladly get you the answer.
Any other questions for Matt? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, on to bylaws team. A motion moved by Dion Schumacher, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received, numbered, and read a first time this 28th day of January 2019. It's bylaw 2019-3, the interim tax levy. Bylaw 2019-4, the borrowing bylaw. Bylaw 2019-5, the transfer of dedicated gas tax for public transportation. Bylaw 2019-6, Michelle, it's Lot 6, Concession 10 Brunel, 124 Seeley's Road, Shore Road allowance closure. Bylaw 2019-7, Solway, Parts Lot 8 and 9, Concession 11 Chafee, also at 1098 South Wasiosa Lake Road, a rezoning. Bylaw 2019-8, Scoff, which is part lots 11, 12, and 13, Concession 1 Brunel at 509 Tucker Lake Road, a rezoning. Bylaw 2019-9, Scoff, part lots 12 and 13, Concession 1 Brunel, 509 Tucker Lake Road. It's the lifting of a holding zone. Bylaw 2019-10, Payne, part lot 30, Concession 8 Chafee. It's 1569 Williamsport Road, a rezoning. Bylaw 2019-11, also Payne, part lot 30, Concession 8 Chafee at 1569 Williamsport Road, a lifting of holding. And bylaw 2019-13, that's Heron and Mannon Solutions, Inc., part lots 9 and 10, Concession 11 Stisted at 90 Cardwell Lake Road and 2086 Yearly Road, rezoning. All those in favor of first reading? That's carried. Motion moved by Dion Schumacher, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that bylaws 2019-3 to bylaw 2019-11 inclusive, and bylaw 2019-13 be reported and read a second and third time and finally passed this 28th day of January 2019. Questions on any of those bylaws? Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Mayor Aitchison. The borrowing bylaw, is that an update just to reflect current day monies, or is that Is this something new?
Devon, do you want to speak to that? It's the standard borrowing bylaw. I don't know if the number's changed or.
Yes, it's a standard borrowing bylaw that we do at the beginning of every year that permits borrowing.
It just gives us the capacity to pay bills while we collect taxes and.
Yes.
So we don't always necessarily even use it, but.
That's correct.
It's there just in
It's
case
just
we
the
need to.
standard.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions about those bylaws? All those in favor? What's carried? I have a motion moved by Karen Terziano, second by Nancy Alcock. Be it resolved that council directs staff to finalize the tender documents based on staff recommendations, option 3, for the redevelopment of the Macaulay-Robertson Ball Diamonds in the 2019 season, and for the project cost of $2,195,545 be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration, and for that staff notify the baseball user groups of a potential shortened 2019 baseball season should the project proceed, and for the council receives the presentation made today by Patrick Wees of WSP regarding the various user groups of Macaulay-Robertson Recreation Park, and for the information collected during customer consultations held on November 7th, 2018 be used in the drafting of the Community Services Master Plan. Oh, okay. That was the motion that we discussed some time ago, team. And I believe Deputy Mayor Terziano has potential amendment. So I don't have it in front of me, but I'll turn over to Deputy Mayor.
I do have an amendment, but I'm wondering, can we have discussion before putting the amendment on the table in case there's more amendment to it? Or do you prefer to
Okay.
do it in stages?
All right, let's do that. And because of that, I'll start with you,
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
So the First Amendment, I still have questions, but the First Amendment that's on this one is that we actually replace option 3 with option 6, which is to do the infields, backstops, dugouts,
And lights.
and leave the outfields and outfield fencing for a future year. And option 6 actually specifies the year, which I don't think we need to specify the year for it. And further, that the lights on Diamond F, which that diamond is 10 years newer, be delayed as well, which would be, so altogether, those two amendments would take the project down to 1.4 million, or $1,482,359. But then I think there's still some questions to be asked before maybe we actually put it on the table.
So if I may interject, and I'll turn it back over to you in a moment. Your rationale for proposing these amendments are to do something that we can afford to do in the context of what we actually have money to do, as opposed to, going out and borrowing money or having a reserve go into the negative. Is that fair?
Very fair, yes. Even at 1.4 million, we don't quite have the funds to do that, so we will be going slightly into a negative reserve, but not nearly as much as if we were trying to do the entire project at once. And that option does address pretty much most of the really serious needs right now, and it doesn't mean that once we build the reserve up, we can't fit some more work in down the road.
I guess what I would add, that that amendment effectively addresses the dangerous things about what's going on with our ball diamonds, these bad lips and that kind of stuff, and so I would say that, the safety issues, I think, would certainly be covered by that. Would you say that's fair, Mr. Director? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you, Worship. So the first question I would have through you, Steve, is if we go out to tender, Steve, and we pick an option like this, can we tender it in such a way that if our prices come in better than we thought, we could add pieces? Can we tender it so that we have unit prices, I guess, that we could build or even subtract if we really needed to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly. Everything can be a provisional price. We could even get a pricing right now, and I was thinking that if we go out with a With option 6, I was thinking we'd still get provisional pricing on the outfield. So when we talk about that 3-4 years from now, whenever it is, we've got good current numbers. So everything could be done as a provisional price, and it could be added to a contract or subtracted from a contract.
Okay. Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the numbers I'm looking at here, sort of line by line, these haven't gone out to tender yet?
No, this is from our consultant who's done work in ball fields, unit pricing. It's quite typical how this is done, is your consultants will give you a budget number, if you will. But this has not been tendered, so this price could go up or it could go down.
Because I mean, I have to say that I was kind of taken aback at some of the numbers I saw here. Not that I've had a career building baseball diamonds or anything, but certainly I just was blown away. I thought it was a lot of money for things like, you know, sod and stuff like that. But anyways, so hopefully if it goes out to tender, it'll even be a better number. Thank you.
Okay. Any Councillor Weep?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, actually probably to Deputy Mayor Terziano, are you hoping that we stay away from, say, things like the outfield fences at this point in time? Because I'm trying to find the 6 option, but I don't know where that, I'm not sure where I'm looking on in my agenda. Right there. Okay, so.
Item 9.1, I'm told.
That's it, the first, right. So when we talk about, sorry, in discussions we had prior, we mentioned that if we don't do the outfield warning tracks, we may not have to do the actual fences themselves. So are you hoping that as the years, or as the time goes and we relook at this phase 2, if you will, if we maybe even stay away from some of these items altogether?
Deputy Mayor Terziano?
I'm not sure if I actually follow you, but the outfields themselves and the outfield fencing, if we don't go anywhere near that, I would assume that we would not be considering warning tracks either, because those would be part of that package if and when it gets done.
Yeah, they would be done in the future year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would be delayed. Councillor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think through you to Deputy Mayor Terziano. So I understand it correctly, the proposal or in the amendment is spending 1.4 million this year and then putting other projects off to future years. It's not like a phase 1, phase 2 strategy. It's all this year, right? Is that, so we're spending 1.4 this year?
But it would be phased, is what.
Oh, did I miss that? Sorry. Okay.
So
I'm glad I
so we
asked.
have taken a piece of the project away from this year, for sure.
But that's what I'm saying. So is the proposal now to phase 1 in 2019 and then phase 2 in 2020, or is it further out?
No, hopefully it's further out.
That-
Hopefully it's
and
even
that's-
further out than 2022.
So that's what I was asking.
But it would buy us the time to start, to put money
No,
aside and build it
that's-
up and
That's
have
what
the
I
money
was
in the
asking.
bank to do
Okay.
it, as opposed to.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed in option 6 then, that drainage would not be improved in the outfield in 2019, or this year. And irrigation would be done in 2022. What about drainage? Would it never, ever be addressed then? Or would it be picked up in 2022?
It would be.
When the outfields are done, it would be addressed then.
It would be done then, okay.
The drainage in the infield would be dealt with in the first phase of the project, though.
So in 2022, it would be irrigation and drainage and the fences?
If that happened in 2022, I think that Deputy Mayor Terziano is saying, not necessarily specifically identifying 2022 as the year it gets done, but that it be done. The outfield fences are actually in pretty good shape. There aren't warning tracks, but, you know, we could do those maybe even further out than 2022 as needed. I think that the outfield's drained pretty well, actually. That's not really the big issue on these. The real serious issue is the infield material is broken down, it's just not, doesn't stand up anymore, and that's probably the biggest issue. And the backstops behind the batters' cages are too low, right? That's another big issue, so those are the biggest issues, I'm told, and the lighting, I guess.
Correct, and there is drainage issues on the infield.
Yeah, so,
So my understanding, or not my understanding, just to be clear, so option 6, as Councilor Terziano's indicated, would basically be all your infield work. So starting at your first base and your third base, all your infield work, your backstops, your higher backstops, redoing the players' benches, that sort of area. Obviously, we blend in with the outfield where that lip would be dealt with, so it's dealt with. The outfield, the drainage work in the outfield, the irrigation, the warning track, and the fence around the outfield would be left to a later date. And the lighting would be done with the exception of Diamond F. Diamond F, which is 10 years newer, would be postponed until a later date, as the resolution reads now.
right. That's exactly what is being proposed by Deputy Mayor Terziano. So I'm going to go to Councillor Weeb again and then to Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. We talked when the consultant was here about maybe not having an urgency to redo the outfield right away, but there has been some concerns about some potholes and this and that out there. Is there any plan for doing some top dressing in this first phase?
We can do some small top dressing, but some people have complained that the fields aren't perfectly level. They won't be perfectly level when we're done either.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be some dips and there'll be some dives in the outfields, but every year we do some top dressing anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. The dips and dives just make the game more interesting, I think. Just for clarity, there was some talking in the documents here about types of lighting. We're not discussing that.
The
kind
types
thing,
of lighting?
like LED and stuff like that. Was
that
that something?
That was in the original proposal, I think, which you probably didn't see because it was a previous term. So you can certainly, you can speak to that if you have questions about the kind of lighting.
I just want, I guess, not having been part of the last council and been part of these previous discussions, I just want clarity on what exactly so we've got a number 6 option, and it's got a different amount of money, and is the wording of the motion the same, that this amount of money is added to the capital budget for consideration? We're not proving this amount of money right now.
Yeah, so maybe what I should do now then, if it's okay with everybody, is I'll read the amendment, since it's been described in sort of roundabout ways but not read. I'll read it to you now, and then we can further discuss it. Moved by Karen Terziano, seconded by Brian Thompson. Be it resolved, the following be struck out in the first paragraph. So that's staff's recommendation, option 3 gets removed. And further that, the following be hereby inserted in its place. So that's option 6, with the exclusion of the lights on Diamond F in the phasing options for McCully Ball Diamonds document as circulated. And for that, the following amount be struck out in the second paragraph, $2,195,545. And for that, the following be hereby inserted in its place, $1,482,359. And for that, the following word be struck out in the fourth paragraph today. And for that, the following be hereby inserted in its place on September 26th, 2018. The amendment is probably clear as mud. So I will read the motion as amended if it were to be amended. I'm sure I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm going to do it because it doesn't make sense to me, and I just read it. Moved by Karen, so this is how it would read. Moved by Karen Terziano, second by Brian Thompson. Be it resolved, council directs staff to finalize the tender documents based on option 6, with the exclusion of the lights on Diamond F in the phasing options for McCully Ball Diamonds document as circulated for the redevelopment of McCully Robertson baseball diamonds in the 2019 season. And for the project cost of $1,482,359 be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. And for the staff notify the baseball user groups of a potential shortened 2019 baseball season should the project proceed. And for that council receives the presentation made on September 26th, 2018 by Patrick Wees of WSP regarding the various user groups of McCully Robertson Recreation Park. And for the information collected during customer consultations held on November 7th, 2018 be used in the drafting of the community services master plan. So that would be the amended motion. Okay, so further, I'm going to let Deputy Mayor Terziano start again now.
I just have one concern about it, and that's that option 6 identifies the second phase as happening in 2022, and I don't think we want to identify a year for that phase.
Okay, so I don't think it matters, since it all is subject to budget, right? So we can change it after, we can amend this again if you like, but this is subject to the budget. The 2022 discussion is subject to the budget as well, so we can change that down the road should we need to, if you like.
Yep.
Is that, you think that's okay?
That would be fine, Your Worship. It might give a false sense to the organization that there is some form of commitment if that 2022 is left in the resolution. So I would suggest that that be removed if this council's not ready to commit. Even though it is subject to budget, I think there's still some sense to the organization that there's a commitment there. So that might cause the council of 2022, which will be all of you, some difficulty.
Okay. Councillor, I'm going to go to Councillor Fitzgerald, then back to Councillor Smith.
I would tend to agree with our CAO and her words of caution to us.
Okay. Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. I would so move that amendment.
So move that amendment so that we, okay, the amendment is, do you want to, we can actually just do an amendment, amending the amendment to remove reference in option 6 from the circulated document referencing 2022. Is that sufficient? Okay? No, the document that we're referencing doesn't speak to a phase 2, does it? Just says, does it? Okay. Okay. So we have a mover or a seconder for that amendment, to the amendment. Councillor Armour, all those in favor of removing 2022? Okay, it's removed. Any other questions on the motion, the amendment as amended? No, new motion. Councillor Weeb.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is related to it or not. I was wondering if we could just highlight again how we got to where we are in terms of funding this project and where we're going to get to in terms of future funding for any potential phasing or additional works down the road.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Terziano, we just talked about this and you've got it down, so you go ahead.
The funding will come $500,000 from the cash in lieu parkland, $700,000 which is in the Parks Reserve now, which takes us to 1.2, and therefore our Parks Reserve will, at this stage, go into a negative for the balance, which is about $250,000, I guess, roughly. Is that? I can't remember the number.
But we could go deeper into the cash in lieu of parkland dedication fund. There is a little more money there. What's the balance of that reserve? Do you remember that?
The balance of that one is $900,000, but I'm not sure why the number 500 was picked. Maybe, Steve, do you know whether there's a reason that we...
There's other projects, I guess, that we can't completely ignore.
I believe you're correct on that. The treasurer felt with some of the other projects which are still looming out there, they didn't want to totally deplete it. Conway Track coming up in a few years, the locks, whatever happens with that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about the amended motion, the amended motion? I did it verbally.
Crystal's going to like it.
But I'll wait. I'll wait for the paperwork. Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Worship.
Thanks for filling the dead air.
No problem. I know I raised this before and with some of the discussions on some of the user groups. The topic of the infield, the actual material in the infield has been a hot one. And there's been some back and forth as to what ultimately is the best use for that space. I know that in December's meeting, I put the motion forward to consider using a specific Washington mix. It would be an additional cost, but since then we've gone back and forth again with staff in those discussions. So I was just wondering, Steve, if you could one last time explain to this group and all those why we've ultimately settled on the mix that we did.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the consultant is recommending a sports field mix. And I know everybody complains that the ball diamonds over there, it's like a sand, they complain. That's a 30-year-old sports field mix. It's wore out, it's done. There was another mix it's a premium mix that can be made locally, it can be made down south, can be made anywhere. It has more clay in it. The more clay you get, the harder the surface, the more drainage problems you run into. So staff is recommending, with the consultant's input, a combination of the two, going back to a sports field mix with a less amount of clay. The one that the user groups in particular have been discussing with you is a red clay mix. It's much higher in clay. They talk about the Bracebridge fields having it. They do have it. They prefer it. They have more rainouts down there. They have more problems with drainage because water doesn't drain through clay. So you're at a happy medium. We can give them an all clay mix, but you'd never play on any days it rains, period. So you don't want that. You want a combination of a granular material, a sand for drainage, and some clay to give it the strength that it needs. The mix over there today is wore out. They're right. It's like a sand. It's not sand, but it's a wore out sports field mix.
I think it also speaks to the need, and the director and I spoke about this earlier, about making sure that, you know, our maintenance procedures are a little different too. I mean, you can't expect something to last for 30 years and not have it break down. And so, you know, obviously the staff will be looking at that as well. So I think Councillor Armour is next.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Steve. I'm just curious, Steve, the sports field mix, does it have a lifespan that you have to, or is there something we can continue to add to it to keep the longevity?
We would continue to add to it. Hopefully, we'd never go 30 years again before we replace it. There'll be a point in time, 15, 20 years down the road, where the top 6 or 8 inches would come off, and we'd be able to add the mix back into it, and we're not into a complete like we are now.
Crazy.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. I think the issue in Bracebridge's fields is it was virtually built on a swamp as well. So that's I mean, when you got to be careful comparing Bracebridge to here, and certainly never go watch a game down there in mosquito season.
All right, we're going to do this officially now. I have an amendment moved by Tim Withey, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved, the following be struck out of the first paragraph, staff's recommendation, option 3, and for the following be hereby inserted in its place. Option 6, with the exclusion of the lights on Diamond F and the reference to completing the projects in 2022 in the phasing options for Macaulay Ball Diamonds document as circulated. And for that, the following amount be struck out in the second paragraph, $2,195,545, and for that the following be hereby inserted in its place, $1,482,359, and for the following word be struck out of the fourth paragraph, today, and further that the following be hereby inserted in its place on September 26th, 2018. Questions on that amendment? All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, so the motion now, as amended, reads, and it's moved by Tim Withey, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved that council directs staff to finalize the tender documents based on option 6 with the exclusion of the lights on Diamond F and the reference to completing the projects in 2022 in the phasing options for Macaulay Ball Diamonds document as circulated for the redevelopment of Macaulay Robertson baseball diamonds in the 2019 season. And further that, the project cost of $1,482,359 be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. And further that staff notify the baseball user groups of a potential shortened 2019 baseball season should the project proceed. And further that council receives the presentation made on September the 26th, 2018 by Patrick Wees of WSP regarding the various user groups of Macaulay Robertson Recreation Park, and for the information collected during customer consultations held on November 7th, 2018 to be used in the drafting of the Community Services Master Plan. Do we need to add anything in here about the provisional nature of the various different items? Or that's understood? Okay. Any final questions? Councilor Reid?
Thank you, Mayor Sin. The other thing we discussed was if potentially the soccer club wanted to develop an additional practice field in that area. And I just want to know, I think it goes without saying, but I'd like to just get on the record that should the should they come forward with a plan that we agree with, that they might be able to have some scale there where you could maybe use some of the equipment at the same time or use some of the material that we're pulling off. And do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just hoping that we make sure that there's
They're
the
considering the
potential for
process?
some cooperation there.
Yep, that's fair. Deputy Mayor Terziano?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Steve. How soon would you assume to go out to budget on this and get some answers back on pricing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as soon as we get council approval through budget process, we'll get the tendering process going. We want to go as quick as possible so we can line a contractor up for the fall. So to answer your question, assuming budget will be passed in another week or two, then we'll be out within 3 weeks type of thing.
Deputy Mayor Terziano?
Assuming budget might not be passed in the next week or two, does this resolution not allow this project to go forward, or is it still contingent on
Still
budget?
subject to the budget, right? Because the first and further that speaks to it being added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. So it won't go out until we've approved a budget. Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Steve, is there is there a reason why you couldn't start tendering right now? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to doesn't mean you have to go with something that gets priced. I mean, you can say subject to and start getting pricing?
So our purchasing policy talks about going out once we have council approval for funding. We will start putting the tender documents together now we have a direction. So we will start to prepare the files, but we don't actually send them out until we know we've got funding in place. So like we're sitting right now with all our capital works projects for roads, bridges, everything. We've got them documents already. We haven't sent them out. The only contracts we've sent out right now is our operational contracts, because we've got to get them moving. We did jump the gun on a couple of the capital projects for trucks, clearly stating in the proposals that council might not approve this and it might get killed. So, but a project of this size, this scope, this nature, we wouldn't go out until we knew the council was committed and we're moving forward.
It's important to respect the integrity of the tendering process, right? I mean, if Huntsville you can get known as the community that tenders all kinds of stuff, and, estimators get all their, work done. They put a lot of hours into these things. I have some experience in that world. And then, all of a sudden they change their mind and they don't do it. Doesn't take very long for you to start getting the special Huntsville tax because you don't approve anything. So I think it's wise to hold off until we actually have a budget approved. Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Worship. I'm very pleased to hear you say that. I know we've had several discussions around this table about our tendering process, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. Any final questions on the amended motion? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Karen Terziano, seconded by Brian Thompson. Be it resolved, council recognizes the following directors of the Downtown Huntsville BIA Board of Management for the 2018-2022 term of council. Lindsay Budis, Steve Campbell, Kenneth Cole, Michelle Gardner, Kelly Haywood, Rachel Hunt, Vanessa Jones, Christine Kropp, Will Lougheed, Kathy Sheridan, Nate Smith, and Joan Wager. Questions? All those in favor? Carried. General information. Council correspondence, November 21st to January 23rd. If you're interested in any of that, we have that for you. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund allocations for information. I guess we just wanted to let council and the community know that as the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Ministry of Finance is reviewing that particular program, they did send out some money for cash flow purposes. I think Huntsville got in the range of $400 and something thousand, which is of course a far cry from the 1.8 million we got last year. They indicated very clearly that that's not the amount we're getting, but it's just to help with a bit of cash flow, and that their review continues. So we still don't know what we will be receiving from that fund, and we don't know when we'll know either. So just wanted to let you know that we have received a little bit. Any questions about that? Or? Okay. The District of Muskoka update. Oh, goodness. Who would like to go first? You know what? Everyone should know that the chair of development services here in Huntsville happens to be also the chair of planning and economic development at the district level. Councillor Alcock is the queen of planning in Muskoka, so very excited to hear your report as the chair of the committee. Madam Chair, go ahead, Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now I'm truly mortified and
No,
embarrassed. There we go. So there are 2 meetings to report on, so I'll try and be really brief. The December meeting was mostly orientation, but it was important from one perspective. We, around the development services, community and planning services at the district. It's a new committee in the fact that it's combined the old planning and economic development with half of the old community services, and now it includes all of the housing programs. So one thing that was really clear around our table is housing, and the provision of affordable housing in our district is really important. So much so that we've directed staff at the district to come back to the February meeting with the draft terms of reference for a proposed attainable housing committee that would have members from the community, preferably those who are involved in some way with the development of affordable housing in our community, as well as some members of council, et cetera. So that's coming back in February, and I think a lot of people are really excited that we're trying to move the yardstick forward on that. At that same meeting, we approved some funding for a housing fourplex here in Muskoka for Habitat for Humanity, and that was $344,000. So that was a good meeting for Huntsville. The last meeting was primarily a budget meeting, and we did approve the 2019 draft tax-supported operating budget and capital budget, which will be going forward to Committee of the Whole next week. We did have 5 amendments to that, but it was a successful meeting and much shorter than I thought it would be. So those are the main highlights from me.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions of Councillor Alcock? Okay. Councillor Thompson, did you want to highlight anything from Engineering and Public Works?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yeah, most of our last 3 meetings have, of course, been dealing with budget deliberations, as you can all well appreciate. A couple that came out of the last couple of meetings, well, I'll just highlight them for you here if I could. We did have a request into the district for a sidewalk crossover or a pedestrian crossing at the west end, Yonge Street in Maine. That was denied. It didn't meet the criteria that is required, I guess, by the District of Muskoka for the spending of that kind of money, I guess, for a pedestrian crossover. It's about a $75,000 touch, generally, is the way they look at it. Part of the rationale behind the deny was the fact that there is not a sidewalk on Yonge Street, and and Yonge Street South and Yonge Street North do not directly align, which is another part of the problem type of thing. It's not all dead in the water, because I asked them to keep at it, and at the Huntsville level, at the municipal level, we are looking at a sidewalk plan for this year, and so Yonge Street has been identified as possibly one area where we would look at putting in a sidewalk. It could be used there for sure. They just didn't feel there was enough pedestrian traffic, and they did do the numbers on a Saturday afternoon in July, so they thought, well, if the numbers aren't there then that warrant a crossover, then they're not going to be there at any other time of the year. At the last meeting, which was just this past week, as a matter of fact, last week, or this week, I should say, last week, I'm sorry, we did approve the expenditure of around $7 million for an upgrading of the water treatment plant in Gravenhurst. And the reason I mention that is because just sort of bring to council's knowledge of the kind of money that's involved in wastewater management and treatment plants and that kind of thing. This is like an upgrade, and it's about a $7 million touch. Now, having said that, that passed very quickly, but then we spent about half an hour budgeting whether or not we should spend $10,000 on a truck for a student at the park at the lots at Port Carling. So I have to make mention of the fact that we do get mired in minutia at times over $10,000, but then a $7 million expense is sort of passed without a great deal of discussion type of thing. So, of course, I guess we'll be looking more closely at all of our budget deliberations come the day after tomorrow when we have our COW meeting at the District of Muskoka. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Councillor Thompson? Councillor Withy, anything from the, what they call it, Health Services Committee, is that what it's called?
Health Services Committee. I was about to say commission, but it is a committee. And it is a new committee. So a lot of our first two meetings were around what are we doing, what are we responsible for, who's taking over what. We had an exhaustive, almost eye-watering presentation about what constitutes healthcare in this province. And then we did get a report from my friend, the CEO of the LIN, came and gave us a report about everything that they do and will probably not soon be doing if the reports are true out of the province. But having said that, it's kind of encouraging actually to be in on the ground floor in this one. There's some interesting things with regards to things that I'm very interested in as far as making sure that Fairburn gets redeveloped. Also looking after the Pines and making sense of the whole EMS picture. It was there were some interesting things in it. The budget, I mean, it was hard to compare a budget because it's the first time. You sort of go, okay. I mean, it was sort of level because everything just was put in. So next year will be a little more interesting, perhaps, but it was good. It was all, it was very interesting in some parts of it. Some parts of it were maybe not so much. But I don't know. I shouldn't really comment like that because it's not really nice of me to say.
All right. Any questions of Councillor Withy? Okay. So I will report on finance and corporate services, which used to be corporate emergency services. We've had 3 meetings, one of which was a joint meeting. At our meeting on December 20th, we discussed, we approved the purchase of new vehicles for various different departments, but the truly exciting thing was the council chamber digital upgrade. They're having probably as many problems or more than we are having with things like microphones and visual aids and that kind of stuff. You can barely see the screen in the district council chambers now. It's hard to believe it's getting that old. And so we've had we're working on trying to get all that upgraded and replaced, and also some audio-visual equipment in some of the meeting rooms downstairs, and it's going to cost some staggering sum of money, $400 and something thousand to do it all. So we talked a lot about that, and that was probably the biggest thing at that meeting. On January 23rd, we had our next meeting. We're working in partnership with Bracebridge and Gravenhurst to do some record management system, and we talked a lot about single sourcing that contract for a specific company. We also had a presentation by the Gravenhurst Chamber of Commerce. They are hosting the Ontario Chamber of Commerce Convention. It's being hosted in I guess Muskoka Lakes and Gravenhurst, and so they asked the district for $10,000 as a sponsor of that. So that'll be coming back as well. We also spent a bit of time on the department budget, and it's coming in well under our budget target, so that's good news. And then the following day, we had a joint meeting with Engineering and Public Works to review the rate-supported budget, which of course is water and sewer, solid waste management, and That's it, I think. Yeah, water, sewer, and solid waste. At any rate, and just like Councillor Thompson said, it's big money involved in those wastewater and water systems, and our rates are among the highest in the province, and it's still not sustainable. So there's a bit of a gap in terms of our capital needs there as well, and we had a fairly healthy discussion about the Mount View sewage treatment plant and closing it, and it's still underfunded to the tune of about $14 million. So we're still eager to see what the province will put together in terms of the infrastructure partnership program with the feds to help with that project. So hopefully we can get that done. That was those meetings. District council meetings, we had December 17th, we had a presentation from Gord McNeese from the Graveners Rotary Club, and then Gord Adams, Paul Connolly, and Ken Little from Gateway Homes. Obviously, that's a great project working on getting more affordable homes into the community. We obviously discussed the water system at Graveners that Councillor Thompson already spoke of. At our last meeting on January 21st, we had it's orientation season at the district, so we had Dr. Charles Gardner from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit tell us all about the great things they do. Scott Young, the executive director of the Muskoka Conservancy, came and talked about all the great things they do, and we really just approved some minutes. And that was pretty much it at that meeting as well. So the orientation session is upon us, and budgets are upon us too. So any questions about that? Councillor Thompson?
I don't have any questions, Your Worship, but I did have another district meeting last week that I should maybe mention on, and it was a meeting of the bargaining committee and being brought up to speed on exactly where we are union-wise in the District of Muskoka. Just for your information, we've heard about the number and some questions about the number of employees at the district. There are 588 employees at the District of Muskoka. Of that number, 82% are in unions. We have 5 different unions, which I will identify for you. But the biggest percentage, almost half, or probably half of all of the employees at the District of Muskoka are in healthcare. The different unions represent, like OPSU, for instance, which is the Pines primarily, is 181 employees there. 79 are in the ParaMed, Councillor Armour's organization, and that they're represented by the United Food and Commercial Workers, or whatever it is, which is rather some kind of a distancing from what you guys really do, I guess. The Ontario nurses, there are only 18 nurses, but they are represented by the Ontario Nurses Association, and then there are 14 in management that make up a total of 292 employees. That's about half of all of our employees are in healthcare in the District of Muskoka. So, yeah. And we have 5 different unions, as I mentioned. We have the UFCW, as Councillor Armour is aware, OPSU, which is the Pines, ONA, which is the nurses. Then we have 2 unions, 2 CUPE unions, which are the inside and the outside workers. And then the majority, or the rest of the employees at the district are made up by non-union. That's just about 79 or 80 that would be in management, and upper management and management positions at the district. So okay. It's sort of an interesting day.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Weeb.
Thank you. Not related to any of that information, but I'm just in terms of the district. One of the questions I have is knowing that there's the province is setting out to re-examine regional governments. I'm wondering if at the district around the table, if there's a sense that something can be accomplished, a new format or formula or structure can be accomplished ahead of the report that's coming from these 2 consultants that they say is about 6 months out? Or is it the consensus of the district councillors that they're going to wait and see what comes back and then react?
I would suggest that I think most people will probably wait and see what they come up with. I've been around the district council table for a lot of years, and we've talked, governance many times. We've talked the size of district council many times. We've talked about different responsibilities that are delivered at different levels and services and changing some of those. And it's remarkably difficult to get anywhere with any of it because there's so many different opinions, and so my sense is that you know, the governance committee that we had in the previous term, which was looking at really the size of district council specifically, the chair was planning to reappoint that committee and get it going again, and I think he's decided that they might as well wait at this point and see, you know, what comes out of that review. I am happy to report to you that that all the heads of councils in Muskoka have received an invitation from that duo to meet with them on February the 20th. So they will be dividing and conquering. Mr. Fenn will meet with half of us, and Mr. Sealing will meet with the other half. So we each meet individually. We'll have an opportunity to tell them our thoughts on Muskoka and governance and the upper versus lower tier and all that kind of stuff. So that's happening February the 20th. So I am obviously you know, more than happy and eager to hear what you know, each member's thoughts are. I was going to prepare something and actually have something written. So if you'd like to submit your thoughts on any of it to me, I'm happy to include that in my submission to whichever one of them that I get to speak with. So, but I think that's where it's at right now. Did you want to add anything to that, Councillor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship. Really quickly, that question was asked at the last council, and the mayor summed it up exactly what was said, which was sort of the wait and see. And in the meantime, they were going to consult with a lot of people. I do have a question, though, because I think they were planning to consult with the heads of councils, but they were also planning on consulting with the heads of the bureaucracies. So I wondered if you, Denise, had anything to say to that.
Madam CIO, have you been reached out to yet?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have not been reached out to yet. Rumor has it Gravenhurst has been contacted, but I have not received any notification that they will be coming to speak with either myself or the mayor. And certainly prior to any consultation with that group, I will be having great discussions with Mayor in depth about our position as a corporation. So I have not been contacted as of yet, but I'll be sure to let you know.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. And further to Councillor Weeb's, that whole issue, and one of the things that struck me as Jamie Clow was speaking is that I'm wondering, you know, this whole integrated shared legal services, are we going down this road when we don't know of 6 months of what's even going to look like down at as far as the regional government goes? It sort of struck me that you know, and I don't really think that these departments or people working in them can sort of work other than business as usual until something happens. But as far as, you know, when we deliberate about something like a shared legal services at a district level, in my mind, I'm wondering, okay, this is coming down the tracks. We don't know what that's going to look like. Are we getting into some sort of agreements and deals that maybe all for naught at the end of the day as well?
What I would say to that is that my interest in what Mr. Clow was speaking to was in part about saving money here in our legal services, because we've been spending a lot of money on legal services. But it was also in part about you know, having more capacity within that department so they could get their jobs done. They need more people but can't justify, I think, a full new person. And so my only concern is that, you know, in the intervening months, while, you know, this group deliberates and meets with people and come up with some kind of a recommendation, and then, you know, whatever it takes for the province to actually get something done, if there's something we can do to make things work smoother and faster for the development community, for example, getting development service agreements from the District of Muskoka is nightmarish. I get more complaints about that than anything else, as does Chair Klink. And so, you know, if this is one step that can save the taxpayer of Huntsville specifically some money, but also improve the level of service that the district legal department delivers, then I think it's still worth pursuing, because there are still people, you know, trying to get things built in this community, whether it's affordable housing or whatever else. And so there's no question, you know, all bets could be off in July when, you know, whatever they get, they may choose to, you know, do something with it, all or part or nothing. And we have no idea what they may decide, but I think, business has to continue, and, in terms of dramatically changing the governance of Muskoka, I think we've recognized that that's probably not worth investing too much energy into, but obviously trying to improve the service we do deliver, that's worth still working away at, and so I think that's probably that's how I perceive that project. Councillor Withey? Sorry, we've already heard from Councillor Withey. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, further to that, that was one of the reasons I asked Jamie about that very thing, because I know we do get probably more complaints about that, or as many complaints about that as anything else, other than potholes and so on. Further to the discussion we had with regards to the question that Councillor Weed did ask, and that during the discourse from our CAO, Michael Dubin, he did mention that in his conversations with Queen's Park, that apparently he has been reassured that one size does not fit all. So don't expect whatever works for Muskoka would work for poor Patrick Brown in Peel region, because that might be a whole different kettle of fish. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Brampton. But anyway, that was sort of reassuring, I thought, too. Like, what works for Muskoka is not going to necessarily, well, definitely would not probably work anywhere else, because we have a very unique situation here with, especially with our geography and our population. And as we mentioned earlier, the cost of services are as high here as they are anywhere in Ontario when it comes to water and sewer and that kind of thing. So I thought that was sort of reassuring that, okay, one size does not fit all. So, we're not going to come in with a formula for all of the areas that are under discussion necessarily, and that was, to me at least, reassuring. So.
Yep. Councillor Fitzgerald? Okay. Anyone else about any of that? Okay, we also added an item regarding Bill 66. This is the proposed Restoring Ontario's Competitive Act 2018. We've received an awful lot of emails and letters about this particular piece of legislation, and specifically the part of the legislation that the open for Ontario is open for business part, Schedule 10. This is the one that people feared would give municipalities, should they opt in on this particular schedule, would give municipalities the authority to just simply ignore absolutely every piece of planning legislation that exists and do whatever they want to create jobs. So, there's no question it was a rather odd, piece of legislation that the Minister of Municipal Affairs has written all the heads of council on this one as well, and well, they thought the tool would never be used at the expense of the green belt or other provincial interests like water quality. They have decided that their government for the people has listened to the concerns raised by MPPs, municipalities, and stakeholders with regards to Schedule 10 of Bill 66. And when the legislature returns in February, they will not proceed with Schedule 10 of the bill. So people's fears can be rested. Any questions about any of that? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've received so many communications regarding Bill 66, and a lot of the inquiries were based on the question of where council sits on all the different components of it. And it being very difficult to answer for council, as you know, I can answer for myself. Is that something that we should pursue as a council together? All the components of this bill?
If you would like council to discuss all the other components of the bill, we can certainly do that. I think that the only really relevant one to municipalities was Schedule 10, and if they've withdrawn that, then...
That was the one of major concern from constituents.
And the government has said they're withdrawing that schedule, so I don't think they care about our opinion anymore.
I guess we'll follow up and see what the concerns are now.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor... Was it? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. And I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Okay. So we're going to have to go into closed session for a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll give everyone a few minutes to pack up, and then we'll read this resolution and go into close. So, and there will be a couple of motions coming out of closed, just so you guys are aware. Okay? So we'll take a 10, 15-minute break.